I'm Oprah as a dude, and I love you all. Great, here we go. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Reyes Reflection Podcast, your hub to listen to individual personal stories where we reflect, hosted by yours truly, Nathanael Reyes, hence the Reyes Reflection. Make sure you aren't just listening and that you are subscribed to the pod. Put a smile on my face, like, comment, and share with one person. And if you really, really want to make me smile, make sure you follow me on the socials at I'm Nathanael Reyes. Now, I got to talk about those folks that allow this pod to happen. ARAVE cards, completing sets one card at a time. Who doesn't like a good deal and who doesn't love Pokemon? I love both. So make sure you get started today by checking out their streams on Whatnot. And if you use my link in my link tree, you could save $15 off your first order. Jocko Fuel, clean fuel without compromise. Pumpkin spice protein powder is back for a limited time. I know there's a heat wave here in the East Coast, but it's still pumpkin season. So if you like pumpkin and you like protein, you like hitting the gym, or you just like a healthier lifestyle, check out Jocko Fuel and use my code Reyes Reflection to save. Mad Rabbit, be bold, be you. They don't just have tattoo aftercare. They have regular daily body washes. They have lotions. And you can build your own bundle. BYOB has its own meaning. Use promo code Reyes Reflection at checkout. And lastly, smacking sunflower seeds with a variety of flavors, such as their cinnamon churro, garlic parm, and cheddar jalapeno. Get yourself a sample pack using my exclusive link in my link tree. Now that is out of the way, it is intro time for my next guest, which I'm super pumped about. I can confidently say that AI is working in my favor because my next guest is someone who used AI to find me. She typed in, who is the best podcaster in the world? Sure enough, I showed up. I don't know how, but I did. I popped up. The Reyes Reflection popped up. But in all seriousness, I love when people reach out to me and they want to get on the show because they see the candid conversation. They see the personality that I display. And if you want to do so, you can use the talk to me in my link tree. She is a spiritual coach, a business coach, a true inspiration who has overcome trials and tribulations in her youth and is now a powerful and successful entrepreneur. She has been featured on various podcasts, and today she has decided to grace us on the Reyes Reflection. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Diamond Drip, welcome to the show.
Nathaniel, I love that so much. I was trying so hard not to laugh while you were talking, so I wouldn't mess up the audio.
You're good. I laugh at myself, so you are completely good. I love it. I love it. So, Diamond, again, thank you so much for doing this. You really did reach out to me, and we had a great conversation about how this episode was going to go. You're featured on various podcasts, which I recommend anybody check it out because Diamond, she is a layered individual. It's not surface. It's deep rooted and it's beautiful. She has a great story of how she got from her childhood to where she is now. And I encourage anybody to listen to any of it. We're going to do our best to encapsulate all of that in this episode of the Reyes Reflection. So before we get into that, the woman who you are that has overcome her depression, you're a kick-ass entrepreneur. I want to start off with learning who you are. Talk to me about what life was like in early Maryland for you.
In early Maryland. So I am from the DMV, even though we don't really like to claim the V because, they're just kind of there, but we loop them in because they're metro accessible. And so I was in and out of DC and Maryland throughout my life, mainly because of the instability of my mom. So she would try and make it out on her own, getting her own place, but then inevitably we would end up back at my grandparents' house in DC. So we bounced around a lot. And that taught me early on, I guess, to be really resilient. When I tell people that I went to, what is it? This was back when 6th grade was still considered elementary school. I really dislike that they consider that middle school now. That grinds my gears. I'm like, no, it's 7th and 8th grade is middle school.
They're still kids. They're still babies.
Right. But having said that, I went to 5 or 6 different elementary schools, like, just because we moved around so much. And my mom was undiagnosed borderline personality disorder with narcissistic tendencies. And I can say that she was undiagnosed confidently because just because she never thought that she needed to go get help and get a diagnosis. I've had a lot of therapy in my lifetime thanks to her. And if 3 out of 4 therapists agree on a diagnosis, I'm pretty confident that it's what's going on there. And so um despite all that, I the way that I grew up with her, I was actually removed from her care when I was 15 due to child abuse and neglect. And so that introduced me to like the group home world. It introduced me to what kinship care was. Um, my mom has a sister who is my Aunt Connie. She's my aunt mom. She's like my heart right now. She's 80 and my mom's 50. So my mom was kind of a surprise baby for my grandparents. They were like 40, didn't think anything could happen. And then boop, there's my mom. And so my aunt, when I was in the group home, just because of how different I was and how much I didn't fit in, I was super unhappy there, as I think most people are in group homes. But then if you grow up in that environment, you kind of just get used to it. And so she saw how unhappy I was and she kind of like rescued me. She had to take like parenting classes and learn how to be a mom and get her house certified and all of that stuff so that I could go live with her. And in that process, they actually found my dad. And so I went to live with him for a little bit. But when you say overcoming a lot of adversity, like even in just like that first like 18-year stint of like moving around and going through all of that, like I'm able to talk about it so easily because even though that's what happened in the past, it doesn't define me today, as you so eloquently put my bio out there.
That does hold a lot of weight on a person's heart because even myself, I didn't grow up nearly the way that you did, but I grew up in some turmoil and some turbulent relationships with my mother and my father. And I think the way that I can best describe it is that they were just two young people that had a bunch of babies because I have many siblings. And from that, it caused a lot of just turmoil of how we were going to be raised, what they had a vision for, and at the same time, just two different cultures. And I think very proud cultures, I should say. And I think it caused a lot of arguments of how we were going to be raised and what we were going to believe in certain holidays and just things of that nature. And I think that unfortunately, there was a lack of maturation that had caused so much fighting between my folks, which is why they weren't able to. But I'm circling back to you. The reason why I brought that up was because I had a hard time even believing that I could be anything without that baggage. I had a hard time believing that, oh, wait, Nathaniel doesn't have to be how he grew up. And there were even moments in my life where I would be insecure to share with friends, ex-girlfriends, etc., just things about my past because I didn't want to be judged and I didn't want it to be perceived as if that had any bearing to my life and who I wanted to be as a person. So I say overcome because it's very easy. I would argue that it's the easiest thing to do to hold on to that hurt and then let it dictate your life. And there's so many people that I've come across that are 45 and they're like, well, my dad was a piece of shit when I was 8 or 9. And I'm not trying to diminish their feelings towards that. But to me, I sit there and I say, yes, completely understand that. But you were 18 at one point, right? And you are 45. So you had 27 years to figure out your life and you chose to hold on to that hurt. And I get it. Pain can hold the heart heavy. But for me, I've always been a person, I like to inspire people to see beyond that and to see beyond the pain and realize that pain is only temporary if you allow it to be temporary. Pain can be forever if you want to hold on to it forever. And now I'm not saying it ever goes away, but the best thing that you can do is to give yourself appropriate resources to overcome these things. I like to describe it as building a foundation of a house. We're all houses. And what I mean by that is all these things that we go through in childhood, they're like little holes. And if we don't have a concrete foundation, then we can't build upon it. If we just do a little bit of dirt, water, whatever, oh, a little board of wood, whatever, we're good. Something is going to seep through that and open that up. You have to have a concrete foundation. That's how I like to view things. I just shared that because to hear a lot of what you've overcome, not seeing your folks, you found your dad after 13 years. That's some pretty heavy stuff. And to be able to flip that into entrepreneurship, I don't want to brown nose you, but that is inspirational. When I hear those things, that is this type of spirit that I like to be a part of, because to hear who you are, how you've overcome this, as opposed to letting it hold weight to your life, because you could have very easily. Again, I know many people who have gone through a fraction of what you've gone through, and they're still holding on to that pain to this day. So I want to say that you are a true inspiration.
I appreciate you. As are you. I remember when we had our pre-podcast chat, you told me about some of the things that you experienced in your childhood, and to see the resilience in both of us. And like you said, it's about building that strong foundation. And it was funny as you were talking. I forget what the example was, but I think it was like the 45-year-old guy who's like, my dad was this and that. And it's so true. Our parents are these markers for like a lot of the trauma. Like one of the pieces of my foundation, before I found the tools that I use now, was learning about attachment styles. Like, what does it mean to have like anxious attachment versus avoidant versus like, you know, I don't think it was called normal, but like whatever the neutral one is when you're raised like in a healthy childhood with less trauma. I think everyone has some sort of trauma, but um yeah, even understanding like and getting over that phase of like, well, I'm going to leave you before you get a chance to leave me, because I don't want you to get close, I don't want to give you that power, and realizing like you got to let that go. So I have my work with the attachment theory to thank for that, but also my partner, he I tried to get rid of him many times, he did not leave, and he showed me that some people will stick it out with you.
So that was always your mentality, because I feel like I can
Yeah.
relate to that. I was always the type of person that I always kept people at arm's length. I never
Mhm.
truly allowed them in. And it's so hard for me to let people in. It's so hard for me to allow them to get to me in a way. And maybe that's protection, but to get to me in a way where I'm so vulnerable that now I have to rely on them. And I think a lot of that is those markers of childhood of fight or flight, right? Like I have to protect myself here, or otherwise it's my ass or your ass. I don't want it to be mine. I'd rather it be yours. And I think that we have that because our spirits just want to resist that pain and that hurt. But it's encouraging to hear that your partner and others have showed you love and have showed you that life is more than just you needing to do it alone. And I can't wait to talk about it, because I do have it in my notes here about how even in entrepreneurship, you talked about lone wolfing, which we will get into in a few short moments. But it's very encouraging to hear how you have overcome that and how you have allowed yourself to feel that love, to feel that genuine spirit.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you did go deep. I remember saying lone wolf. I don't even talk about the lone wolf anymore. but yeah, absolutely. You have to accept that as right? Especially as human beings, we're built for connection. We're built to be, and many of us, like, who come here to clean up karma from past lifetimes, we're here to have a transpersonal journey. We're here to inspire others and help others. And you can't do that alone. You can't do everything by yourself. So
My best example of that was somebody told me, they said, even Jesus walked around with 12 people. And whether you believe in Christ or not, I do. But to me, that goes to show you that you've always needed a group of people to thrive, to be successful, to hold you accountable, to challenge you, sharpen your skills. Iron sharpens iron. And so I do love that you have averted that mentality, because that was also mine too. Heck, look, I have a tattoo of a wolf on my arm because I believe that I was all alone for so long. Because you feel isolated, right? When you go through that trauma, I had siblings, but I still felt like we all had our own individual traumatic times. Like, we grew up with cockroaches crawling all over us and around us as we slept. And I never thought anything bad of it. There would be mice traps in the corner and I wouldn't think anything of it. I would think, oh, it's fine. That's how everyone lives. What do you mean? You don't have that? Again, circling back, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, it was something that I was truly embarrassed of when I started to get my older mentality of like, man, that's kind of embarrassing. I don't want somebody to judge me. I don't want someone to think I'm this awful person. And it took me a while to get into this headspace where I was like, you know what? If somebody truly judges me because of something I couldn't control, then I don't really want you in my life anyways. Like, I don't really know if I want that energy around me.
exactly. Yes.
Before entrepreneurship, you, like most, were trying to find your way, especially after everything we just talked about with your upbringing, your mother, the traumatic experiences there. You had a stint in the Air Force and you even ran a gym. What were those experiences like, and how did they help you realize that entrepreneurship was the step that Diamond needed to take?
Yeah, so the Air Force experience, it taught me a lot. It also perpetuated my need for external fixation because you have to fall in line or like you're gonna get kicked out or like whatever. Like um they don't they don't say that they do like physical labor as punishment anymore, but they call them MTI tools, and they're definitely push-ups and they're definitely sit-ups and flutter kicks. They just call them something different. And so the Air Force, the Air Force was a perfect example of when you start something with fear at the root of it, it's not going to be sustainable. And so, one of the only reasons why I joined the Air Force was because I had had a falling out with my dad, and I didn't really know how I was going to pay for college. And so, what society says is you go to school, you get good grades so you can get into a good college, so you can get a good job, so that you can buy the house and get married and have, the white picket fence lifestyle, American dream, all the things.
Yep.
And so I was like, well, I graduated high school, but I don't have a way to get to this college piece that's apparently necessary to do this life thing. And uh, there really didn't seem like a lot of options, right? Especially when you go to the high school fairs of like, what's next? Which is why I love going back to my old high school and having a table there. And people are like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur, because there weren't people like me at the job fairs. It was like Air Force, it was Chick-fil-A, it was like doing the lifeguard thing. And so I didn't know that entrepreneurship was an option, nor did I think I would have chose it at that time. Because, like, let's be honest, that was something that I was pushed into, and I'll get there. So I went into the Air Force because I was like, well, this is great. Like, I'll get the job. People seem to respect people in the military. They say they're disciplined, and I'll get college credits while I'm in there. Seems like a win-win. Except, you stop being a person and you just become just part of the system. And that for me was, it triggered. So when I was 14, before I was removed from my mom's care, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. And part of the reason why I had that diagnosis was because as a minor, I didn't know that there was any other way to escape what I was going through with my mom. I thought that my only way out was to leave this planet. And so I had been hospitalized many times in my teenage years for running away, suicidal attempts, suicidal ideations, and self harm. And those things land you in the hospital. And obviously, they have to diagnose you with something, because why are you doing this as a child? What's going on? And the depressive symptoms from my bipolar 2 were sometimes debilitating. I was able to suck it up and push it aside when I joined the Air Force, but only for so long. When I went to my second part of tech school, which was in Wichita Falls, Texas, which I did not know was a place on the map. Um, it was one of those situations where I was really missing home. I really missed my individuality. I really missed a lot of, I guess what parts that I felt like made me me. And so it triggered my depression. And I ended up being early separated from the military because of I had the suicidal ideations came back. And so I was honest and I vocalized that. And, they're cool if they mess you up themselves, like if you go to war, but if you go in having suicidal ideations and it's like, we don't think it's going to work out. We're just going to. And so that put me in a place where I was like, okay, well, the military was supposed to be the thing that got me, like the leap into the things that are supposed to make this life thing work. And now that didn't work out. I'm back being a civ. And the depression that I was in was really, really bad. And I would do what I sometimes talk about now is avoid. Like I would just binge watch movies and binge watch shows on Netflix and not try and think about it. But obviously the bank account was running low and I was like, I gotta do something. So I started, one of the movies that I watched, it inspired me to apply for a position at a gym, because I was like, I get to wear sweatpants. I get to tell people that they're doing a great job, even if they're not, but like encouragement. Right? You're doing great. And one of the things that I think I had learned at that time was like, even if you fake a smile, like the endorphins from smiling will like help you feel better. So I was like, it'll be good to get out the house. And then when I got there, I saw that there were opportunities for upward momentum. And I was like, oh, well, now I have a goal. And so I started off as a front desk associate and worked my way up until I was general manager of my own location. And with the confidence of a salaried general manager job, I was like, ooh, I'm going to buy my first 2-bedroom apartment, because in 2017, I became a mom. And I was like, oh, Taylor's going to have her own room. I'm going to have my own room. It's going to be great. And the day that I was unpacking the boxes from my U-Haul, I got a phone call, had to put my box down. And they were like, yeah, the position that we had for you is no longer available. The company was shutting down due to it losing its lease. And I was like, oh, that's great, because I'm in an apartment now that I signed a 12-month lease for, thinking that I had a job to sustain this. And there's a certain thing that happens when, like, obviously your survival is put to a test. It's like, okay, well, how do I make this work? Like, I don't think I can get out of this lease. And that was honestly the thing that pushed me into entrepreneurship, which is why when clients come to me and they have like a stable job and they're like, I want to start a business, I just don't know, and I'm like, you're going to be double-minded. Like, I understand that it's hard to leave a job and go out on your own, but like you're gonna be a little bit double-minded if you try and do them both at the same time, especially if you're any sort of like higher up. Like you're gonna be trying to build your business around your job life. So we do work on strategies to talk through that, and sometimes lives. Like I had one client who she created this schedule, and she was like, yeah, I'm gonna get up at like 5 a.m, go to the gym, and then I'm gonna go to my government job, and then from like 5 to 10, that's when I'm gonna do my business stuff. And I was like, and she also had kids, and so I was like, okay, when is like the rest part happening? She's like, no, I'm good, it's cool. And then like a couple months later, she ended up losing her position, and it forced her into entrepreneurship. And now she's so thankful that it happened, because she hasn't looked back. She's been like thriving. But like I said, when your survival is kind of put to the test, it's like, okay, well, I can't do nothing because then rent's not going to get paid. So I guess I gotta fight. I gotta figure out a way. And so I did like all the quick cash things, the Ubers, the Grubhubs, and I was like, I'm doing a lot of work because I wanted to spend time with my daughter during the day. And she was with her grandparents during the day. And so I wanted to be done. Like I kind of wanted to treat Grubhub and Uber like a 9 to 5, but all the money is in the late night and the weekends. And I was like, but that's when I want to be home with my kid. So I was like, I'm doing a lot of work, it feels like, but I don't feel self-employed. Like and I still got to worry about taxes. So how we make this make sense? And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to try and figure out how to go out on my own. And that was when I started my first business. It was like August, September of 2019, after I was doing all the stuff. And I was like, this is not sustainable. And I had a lot of success in my first business. While I was doing that business, I was in school getting my visual communications degree and concentration in graphic design. And so like a year into running my first business, I was like, ooh, I know Photoshop. I can make some logos. I can help people with websites. And so I started my second business as like a side hustle. So I would have something to direct people to for that piece. And it was through like trying to build both businesses, being in school and being a mom, that like 2 years in, everything really 2-3 years in, because the trial was in 2022, everything started to catch up to me. I was like, oh my God, you're doing so much. Like people would look at me from the outside and they're like, you're doing great. You're running 2 businesses. You're momming it. You're getting great. Like you're getting good grades in school. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm exhausted though. Right. Like the meme of the dog who's like at the table and everything's on fire around him. He's like, it's fine. Everything is fine. It's like,
You said a lot there that I want to unpack that I agree with. How even just energy. I believe energy is binary in the sense of if you go ahead and you put your energy here, something is going to be missing out. It's hard to compartmentalize energy. You just talked about the example of the mom who wakes up at the gym and then goes to her 9 to 5 and then does her business there. And then she has a family, presumably a partner as well. I don't know. But the point that I'm making is that somebody's going to lose. Somebody's going to sacrifice something, no matter what you do in life. If you go ahead and you work 16-hour days, your family's going to compromise. If you work 20-hour days, your sleep's going to compromise. You're going to compromise. Somebody is going to miss out on something, and that's just the way life is. And you also talked about how when you're faced with a crisis, the way you were, how you're unpacking. That is bizarre how you're unpacking your new place. You just signed the lease, and all of a sudden you get hit with the, hey, by the way, you're not going to have this job anymore. But when you get hit with those crises, survival does kick in. And I did read this one time where they said the way you act when you break your leg is different when you're around people or by yourself. And he referenced how when you're hiking, if you break your leg while you're hiking and nobody's around you, the first thing you think of is, damn, I gotta get up. I can't sit here. A wolf can get me, a bear can get me. I gotta crawl, I gotta do something. And you actually feel less pain when you're by yourself because you know you've got to do stuff. Whereas if you're with 10 people, you're actually going to feel more pain because you know you have 10 people that can carry you, and then you'll be fine and you'll be safe. In your case, you just having that crisis, I'm sure you went to a mode where you're like, I gotta go. I can't just sit here and dilly dally. That's not going to do anything for me. It's even, I just feel like life is so much harder when you see your little one right there. You see your little one and you're like, oh wow, it's not just about me. It's this person. I have to legally and actually I have to go ahead and make sure that this little nugget has a home, has food, has clothes, is taken care of. It's not just about me. I'm sure if it was just about you, you could have sat in that leased apartment in the dark. At least that's how I think, right? If it's just me, all I need is a bed on the floor, and I'm cool. I'm chilling. But when you think of those little ones, it's like it's much bigger than just myself at this point in time. So very cool way of how you jumped into entrepreneurship, because some people may view that as, damn, like now my life is over. Whereas you took it as, dang, I got to start moving now. I can't just be sitting here all day. And you hustled and you grinded. And yeah, it stinks that you had to do the Uber Eats and the DoorDash, but those are all skills that have helped you be where you at. I'm not a person that ever, I don't like to live in the mind frame of regret or upset of how I did something or what I did, because I think what you do in that time is needed to survive. Even now, I'm 30. In 10 years, I might look back at some of these interviews I do and think I was a complete idiot. I think that's just how life is. Like, you're supposed to grow. It's not just, it's not just this one track mind. When you are not a one track mind, you pick up all these nuances that you learned in life to help you thrive and to be the successful person that you are. You pick up these skills, the resilience skills, right? Look at, you've been a fighter since day one. I clearly look at your life. Man, if I ever need to get into a street fight, I know who I'm calling.
I appreciate that. Oh man, yes.
So as I mentioned, I've listened to what feels like 24 hours of your podcast. That you were great. You talked about business, your mental health. So let's dive into that now. Part of your work is reading people's energy to help their businesses and what they do.
Yeah.
Help me shed some karma, because I feel like, as I mentioned, we've all gone through life. Life's messy. It's not black and white. It's really gray. We've all had to do some stuff. There are times where I've had to do some things that maybe now as an older man, I look back and I'm like, man, that's some bad juju. Because I did see in one of your interviews, you talked about how our souls are carrying karma through life, through the lives that we live. And sometimes we have to shed that. Help me. What does a person like myself do?
So it all depends on what angle cross you are. So there are, and this is going into human design a little bit of gene keys, but we have what are called incarnation crosses. And so there are three. There's left angle, right angle, and juxtaposition. And in my experience, most of the time, I either see people with left angle crosses, so they're here to clean up karma from past lifetimes. They're here to have a very transpersonal journey. They're here to impact others' lives, inspire others' lives. And then you have right angles who are here to kind of like, right, if left angles are here to clean up karma, they're here to create karma for their future lifetimes. And so they're here to have a very personal journey. They're here to learn things and gain the wisdom that they'll need to, you know, take with them into future lifetimes. And so it's not it's not super black and white, right? Like if you've done things in your past to survive, like that's where awareness is the biggest piece of what I talk about. So whether it's an awareness of your gifts and strengths, whether it's awareness of your shadows and where you're more likely to lean into kind of the dark, lower frequencies, and how you're able to be in your awareness enough to know when you're doing that and to make the shift, make the change, to choose better, to choose the gift, to choose those higher frequencies. There's a chart that I actually, I've read my aunt's energy. Now she's 80. So I don't know how much deconditioning she's actually going to do, because her conditioning, her programming is wired in there at least 65 years deep, right? But I do try and give her things that help her understand like the energy frequencies. And so there's this chart, it's like a human chart. And so it talks about how some emotions are like super high. So like love, peace, gratitude, joy, these are all like higher frequency emotions. And then you have like the lower ones. And so the higher ones, they expand you. The lower ones, they actually make you contract. They actually make you go into yourself. So like shame, like what we were talking about earlier, fear, guilt, grief is even one of those. It's not super low, it's kind of more in the middle, but that was actually one of the reasons that I showed my aunt the chart, because you know, when you've lived 80 years and you have lots of people in your life, people inevitably leave this planet at some point, some earlier than 80. And so she lost her husband like at least 5 or 6 years ago, and we lost my grandmother in 2018. And with my mom being my mom, it's I love these tools because they give me an understanding on a deeper level of what's going on with her. So her emotional reaction to the manifestation of her wound is aloofness. And so I didn't used to understand like why someone could be so closed off and so like private and like towards their own family. But when I saw her energy, I was like, oh, that makes sense. This is just how she heals. And so even grieving the loss of somebody who is alive, they're just choosing not to be there. She has a lot of grief that she's dealing with. And I know that it's easier said than done to just be like, don't be in grief, right? Because if it was that easy, like
Yeah,
people
right.
who have lost people all the time. But just encouraging her to be in those higher frequencies, encouraging her to take the baby steps of being in her awareness. Oh, okay. Being in
Okay.
her being in her awareness
Aura.
enough,
That is aura
right?
right there.
I didn't even realize I was doing 2 thumbs up, but you know, whatever. Um, but encouraging her, like I got her this book. It's all about chakras. Even though we had a shift where we moved to from 7-centered beings to 9-centered beings, the chakra modality, logic thinking, it still applies a great deal. And so I got her this book about like chakras and stuff. And obviously anything about chakras is going to be very intentional, personal work. And my aunt has been a people pleaser her whole entire life. And so we were just talking about this a couple weeks ago. She was reading the book and it started like kind of questioning her to go inside of herself and to look at areas where maybe she had chose other people over herself, and to really sit in the shadow of that, cuz like you have to sit and you have to accept where you chose something that didn't serve you in order to be able to understand how you can choose better. And she was like, "Yeah, I closed the book and I put it down. I got scared." And I was like, what do you mean? Like you go through it. Like so there's always a choice, right? So even with human design, I like to call it an owner's manual for this vessel in this incarnation of this lifetime. It gives you kind of a blueprint of how you make your best, most aligned decisions. But at the end of the day, we have free will. So we always have choice. And so while you may have done things earlier in life to survive that maybe you look back on now and you're like, oh, that's going to be bad karma. We always have the choice to make different choices. We always have that option to look at those areas and see what we can learn from them, see what wisdom we can take from them so that we can impart that wisdom, not just for ourselves, but for other people who might be making the same choices, who might be going down that same road that we had been down.
I agree with that. Like if I watch a video and they talk about not to do drugs, they bring a reformed drug addict, or don't be in prison. They bring someone who's been in prison but has turned their life around. And so I agree with that about how, in a way, you almost need that, those two types of personalities, right? In a way, you need the people that are there to do the good, to shed, but you need those people to also make the mistakes to go ahead and learn from that. It's almost a fact. It's almost like we need that so that way we can look at that and say, I don't want to do that, or I will do that. And it's also interesting that you said that at the end of the day, we have free will. I think that whether you believe in Christ or you believe in whatever religion, almost every single one reverts back to the baseline that you have free will, that you have the choice to make on a lot of these decisions. Now, I think it's safe to say that energy is radiant, right? I made a joke about your aura, about how you said that, but you said in an interview that aura can lead others to almost go to you. And I think energy does do that, right? And I think you use the example of in Target, because I feel like I have that same thing too, right? I've had people come up to me and say, do you know where this is? And it's almost like that person's energy reading is reading that they trust you, or they trust that they can ask you for something and that you will give them information. And I think that's just human nature, right? Because there are times where I walk down into a wholesale store and I think, I'm not going to ask this person anything, right? Or even just workers, right? We see a worker and we can tell by their infectious energy, oh, wow, this person knows what to do. And then then you look to your left and there's a person who has one AirPod in. We've all seen it. I'm not mocking anybody. We've all seen it. Everyone who listens to this podcast will or watches this podcast will know exactly what I'm talking about. We've all been there. But the point that I'm making is like your energy can be infectious. You can have an aura. And I know that because of social media that has a different meaning, but aura really just means the energy that
Yeah.
you give off. So what about working with people or discussing different energies with people entices you to have these type of conversations?
For me, I think it's more of like just a one line thing now. So the one line in human design is like the investigator, the researcher. Like we love ourselves a good rabbit hole. And so originally, it was when I first discovered human design, it was like, oh my gosh, this is like a cheat code for life. Like, this is how I'm designed to be in the world. Like, this is why when I try and will myself into certain things, certain proven strategies and frameworks, like it doesn't work for me. Like at my core, one of the things in my purpose is originality. I can't do that if I'm following someone else's framework. So at first it was like, okay, I've always been told that I'm different, that I'm special, that I'm resilient, like all of these things. But because of, and I learned this, something in my chart, like I never could accept it. I didn't think that I was like worth those like remarks of greatness or whatever. But as I tangibly was able to see, like these are my gifts. Like this is the purpose that I'm here to you know like do in this lifetime. And then looking at my daughter's chart and my partner's chart, I was like, oh, these are hacks. This is how I communicate with you better. This is how I don't let your energy bring down my energy just because it's different than mine. This is how I can navigate this. So at first it was very much like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then when I started doing it for other people, because as a one line, I was like, I know I want to bring this human design thing into my business coaching, but I am not sure how this fits. This seems very woo woo in the people that I am around. I don't know how this is gonna tie over with them. And so as a one line, I would do my little mini experiments. So like my disc coach, you know, someone who works with personalities and things like that. I did him and he was like, you've given me something to think about, Diamond. And I was like, oh, have I? Oh. And then like doing other people in my network. And I remember this one person in particular, we discovered like most everyone in the population is a generator or a manifesting generator. We make up like 70% of the population. But then we have non-energy types like projectors. And so they're here to be like our guides. They're here to see the bigger picture. And one of the readings that I did initially, we found out that she was a projector. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're a projector. And she was a self-projected projector. So for her to make her best decisions, it is really aligned for her to speak her truth into her field, her aura field, and to hear that truth reflected back to her so that she can know like and feel in her the wisdom that's in her body whether or not something is aligned for her. And we had a session where, you know, almost everything that I was reading, it was about like patience. It was about like using her imagination. And she was one of those people who had a 9-to-4 job and she wanted to start this like networking business. And she just, you know, all the time was going to the job. And then she was living with her mom. And so her mom was demanding attention and things like that from her. After our reading and after we've talked a few times, like she'll randomly message me sometimes. Like she messaged me like 2 weeks ago and was like, I think I'm going through my second spiritual awakening. And I was like, that's awesome. This is random as hell on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. But I'm happy for you. And recognizing that she's a self-projected projector, I just let her send me a bunch of audio messages. And then I was able to reflect back to her what I heard with what her partner was going through, even hearing that she was able to like muster up the confidence to move out of her mom's and get her own place. Because for projectors, it's really aligned for them to have a lot of time alone so that they can clear out the energies from the people that they take in during the day. And I can only imagine how much energy her mom was giving her. And so like now for me, it's seeing the spark of joy that happens when I'm able to help people understand and validate and confirm who they are, because society does such a great job at making us think that we're wrong for being who we are if it doesn't fit into the status quo. Because I know that human design is the science of differentiation. So it's the joy of seeing how every single person's chart that I've pulled, and I've pulled it over 100 charts easily at this point, every single person is different. Like there might be similarities, especially if the birthdays are around like the same like birthday, but the year might be different. But it's so astounding to me to see someone is different and then to be able to tangibly see it and then explain to them why they're awesome, because we don't get told that enough. We get told that we're wrong, that we need to do or buy X, Y, and Z, and then we'll be whole. And it's like, no, you are enough just as you are, just as you came into this world being. Like you're a 1 in a million cosmic event. Like you're awesome.
You're 100%. It's so much more complex than just those charts that you see where it says, are you an introvert or an extrovert, or are you this or that? It's just much deeper than that. There is a lot of layers. And it's interesting that you say that. Even if you have children, right? There's going to be similarities that your child has from you, and they are literally half of you, but not really. because they're also their own person, and they're also going to make their own decisions. They're going to have their own beliefs. They're going to have their own way of how they view life. And I love how you brought up how society pigeonholes people. To me, that is one of the biggest, I think, in my opinion, one of the biggest flaws that we have is that society tells people that they're wrong, weird, and the biggest thing that they say is they say you're crazy. That's what society will say. They'll say you're crazy. And the reason why is because clearly now, the minute that you hear somebody's crazy, they're debunked. And now they have no leg to stand on because you've now casted how their worldview is askew. When there's a lot of times when I see things or I'll read things or I'll hear things that maybe 10, 15 years ago somebody said they were crazy. And I'm like, wait a minute, isn't that happening in today's world? So were they really that crazy? I don't know. It's just, and I'm not, this isn't me getting into a political scale or spectrum or anything like that. It's just me saying that there's a lot of times where society will pigeonhole somebody and will say, no, the only way to be successful is go to school, then go to university, do your volunteering, do this, then get your 9 to 5, be $100,000 in debt because of university, then be $400,000 in debt in a house. But don't worry, your vision of a perfect life will be when it, to me, it just doesn't make sense. And I think that there's a lot of things that don't add up, and I'm more into these type of conversations about how we're much more than that. We're much more than just a person walking around in this world. You said in an interview, and I love, or actually you said it multiple times, you often say I'm a soul living in a human experience. And that couldn't resonate with me more. And I feel like that's whether you believe in a higher power, whether you don't, you are a soul, you are a being that's more than just somebody walking around trying to work a 9 to 5, trying to play in a men's soccer league on a Saturday, et cetera, et cetera. You're much more than that. You're meant to have deeper connections. You're meant to be a part of these tribes and these people and to have connections and interpersonal conversations like this. So circling back to you're a soul living in a human experience, what does that mean to Diamond?
Yeah, I love that. So we oftentimes hear, we're a mind, body, and spirit. Like a lot of people, even in different religions, will recognize that. One of the things that I learned, because in addition to human design and gene keys, I'm getting a certification as a soul realignment practitioner, which is all about the Akashic records. And in one of the earlier lessons, she talks about how we in the fifth dimension, we're all interconnected. And that's where the Akashic records lie, which is why you're able to access the records of other people with their consent, of course, and be able to see like the different, because time also doesn't exist in the fifth dimension. So you're able to see like the soul at origination, some of the negative and positive choices that have been made in past lifetimes, and be able to pinpoint how to self-correct and get you back on the path to wherever your, I don't know, destiny, if you want to use that word, is calling you to be. And she talks about how as souls who are living in this fifth dimension, we come down to the 3D plane in order to experience ourselves, because everything's so interconnected up there. Like it's noisy. Like I like to think of it as like, and she does a really good job of like explaining this as like the Akashic records are like the internet. And we all have these monitors, these different servers that all go into like this giant like ecosystem of interconnected webs and things like that. And she's like, it's hard to experience yourself as an individual when you're so intertwined like that. And so we come and we incarnate so that we can experience ourselves, experience our gifts, and have a life that is our own, where we can have that separation. And what was crazy is on my and I you just said crazy, but like crazy in a good way. On my birthday trip this past year, I I love getting away. It's funny, like we come down here to experience ourselves, and every chance I get, I'm like, especially living in an apartment, I'm like, I need to get away, like away from people. I need to not people for a while.
Yeah.
And so my family and I, we rented this house, this cabin in the woods, and it had this screen porch. And my partner and I, we were just laying down and just listening to the sounds of nature. Um, I had done some mushrooms because it was my birthday. He had done a little microdose, and I was thinking about what she was saying. And when I realized that as a soul, having this human experience, being in this body, like we can choose to connect with spirit. Like if you quiet the mind enough, right? That's what meditation is all about. If you quiet the mind enough, you can actually feel the spirit that's inside of you if you really focus in. And so I was able to just have this super beautiful, peaceful moment with spirit, and to recognize that I don't do this enough. Like I don't just sit with myself enough. I'm always got a to-do list. I've always got like a bunch of stuff, right? Whether it's momming, whether it's the business, whether it's like whatever it is. And I don't take enough time to just sit and be with spirit. And that helped me to see the value of what I do for people, because while it does excite me, while it does, it makes me feel good to help other people understand who they are, understand how to navigate their vessel. That takes a lot of time and energy and research that I'm doing for someone else. And at that time, I was not charging enough for my services. And so that experience really helped me to see like, and the reason why I wasn't charging enough was because I didn't know how valuable what I was doing for people was. And somebody had said this in an interview that I did recently. They were like, "You got the cheat codes. Like you, you got the cheat codes for life. Like you're helping people understand how to make these really transformational like decisions and how to be confident in that when society is constantly telling us that we're wrong, when our family, who may have been brought up a different way, is questioning you because what you're trying to do is different from what they did or what their parents did. And they're like, you have the cheat codes. And so that whole experience, it was like, wow, I really want to spend more time with spirit. I really want to spend more time not giving the mind power, because when we're so busy doing, our mind is just going, 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 and the inner critic lives there. And we oftentimes, because we're just doing a bunch of stuff, like we don't notice how frequently the inner critic tries to speak up and tries to like push us into doing things. We don't notice how loud it is sometimes. And so to just be able to be in that awareness and be with spirit and recognize that we are like these bodies, like, yeah, that's where we are right now in this lifetime. That's how we're experiencing ourselves. But so many people talk about what happens after we die. Like, yes, our physical bodies, they deteriorate, but we reincarnate. I think that's like in Buddhism. That's in a lot of things actually. Like we reincarnate. We experience ourselves again in different ways.
It's almost in every single
Yeah.
religion. It really is that you eventually come into a different being. And what's really fascinating about what you said is I feel like we've lost the love for simple things. Sitting in nature. If you realize kids can't even do that anymore. Kids can't sit outside. And I remember sitting outside and just picking up little blades of grass, not glass. Imagine that. No. Uh, little blades of grass and looking at the bugs, maybe seeing a worm. And it's just like the ecosystem, you see much more deeper. It really opens up your mind. It really does make you realize, wow, there's more than just me here. And it's so fascinating that you said mind, body, spirit, because while I believe that 100%, I think that unfortunately, we're almost in the mentality where we only focus on the body. We don't focus on the mind, and we don't focus on the spirit. And what I mean by that is there's so many people that I feel like I know that are almost on autopilot. They're just going, and they have nothing up here. It's just them going. And I feel like you notice that even when you're just walking down a street, the amount of times that I've walked down a street and I've seen somebody and I'm like, "Hi, how's it going?" And maybe their spirits are a little sore or hurt. I understand that. But the amount of times that I've walked by and I just stoic, no response, not even a look over at me as if I don't exist. It makes me really sad. It makes me really sad to see that, because it makes me really sad to see how far gone we've gone. These people, unfortunately, are so not in tuned with their mind and their spirit, and not realizing that there was a before and there will be an after. Because you mentioned the cosmic being, how we're even here, how we were born is a cosmic miracle.
Yeah.
You know, they say that, and I'm not trying to get graphic or disturbing here, but like I from what I remember in sex ed, there's like hundreds of thousands. And the fact that we're all here, we should be very thankful and very proud of that. We all can read between the lines. We're all adults here. We're all grown up. Anybody who listen on the Reyes Reflection. But the point that I'm making is that like there's just so much more to the journey than just I'm here, my body's being used for construction work or this, and then one day I'll die and that's it. I don't believe that. I think that there was so much more before. There's a lot here. Yes, that I agree with. And then there's going to be a whole lot more after. And how you choose to live this experience that you have is on you, as you mentioned, the free will. But it really does make me a little sad to see how society has almost programmed and psyop people into not thinking about their mind and their spirit. It really is just think about their body. And always, in my opinion, I think they think about it of like, oh, the only way to make money is to overtly use your body, whether that be a professional athlete, work 16 hours at a construction job, sell your body, etc. Whereas like you have more than that. You're more than that. And eventually that's going to wither away. You just talked about it. Your body does deteriorate. I remember reading that from the moment we're born, we start to die. So it's like your body's already deteriorating the minute you come here. So why not focus more on the mind and the spirit, on the things that are going to last a lot longer? I don't know why so many people are so focused on their human bodies. Maybe that's all they see. But to me, I'm like, you have a mind, you have a spirit, and you have a body.
It's in the conditioning. Like we are conditioned to believe what we can see, feel, hear, taste, touch. If we can't see it, if we can't feel it, like, and that's why the physical body is such an easy thing to focus on. That's why things like law of attraction are so hard for some people, because you're like, you want me to just like visualize me having the success of whatever it is that I'm wishing for, even though my physical circumstances don't match that. And you just want me to keep having faith that it'll happen. And then it does, like it does. And then right, patience is a virtue. If it doesn't happen quick enough, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on the physical because that's obviously what I can control.
Do you think it's conditioning from society?
1,000%. We're conditioned to use our logical mind when there's like nothing in human design that I've come across says that the way that we make our best decisions comes from the mind. So our sacral as generators, our sacral tells us, no, don't do that. Or like, yeah, do that. Absolutely. If you have splenic authority, your gut will tell you. It's like in an instant, it's like instantaneous intuition. You have a feeling, but oftentimes, because we live in a logical society, our mind will then override whatever our intuition says. And we're like, well, there can't be a reason for that. So I'm going to just go with what makes sense. Even with like emotional authority, like riding out the wave. I remember somebody had asked me to do a conference and speak at a conference in April of next year. And my sacral initially was like, hell yeah, like you love her and you want to speak on stages. So yeah. But to have like, and like some people, they'd be like, you got to say yes right now or else it's going to pass you. But in knowing how I make my best decisions, I was like, I need to sleep on it. I need to make sure that it's still a yes for me. And so there are 7 different authorities that I can like, you know, dive into. But the real clarity here is that it doesn't come from the mind. There is so much wisdom in our bodies and in feeling into things to see if it's a right fit for us. But we've been conditioned to trust our logical mind. Like if it doesn't have facts to back it up, then don't do it.
Right. You went to various classes, training, watched a lot of videos at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey. How helpful was it to put yourself in predicaments and in classes with like-minded individuals?
It was super helpful. Like even in the business coaching program that I was in last year, while I felt like a lot of the one size fits all proven strategies and frameworks didn't work for me, to be able to have chats with other women who were feeling the same way that I did. Cause right, they always, in those types of programs, they always, you know, bring to the stage the people who are having like the 6-figure launches and you just got X many clients. And you're like, what the hell am I doing wrong? And then to be in community with people who, yes, some people are having success and it's great to be in community with them too. Cause it's like, you did steps 1, 2, and 3, right? Like making sure you're not crazy. Like I also did steps 1, 2, and 3. And like, my thing isn't thinking the way that yours is. But to have people who are like, yeah, I did exactly what they said. And I had no discovery calls from that masterclass and be like, okay, I'm not crazy. Yeah, we're doing the stuff. Like we're getting the other things that they say, right? We're getting the other things that they say comes with it, visibility, recognition, all of the great things. But we're like, we're the clients though. Mm-hmm. We're those guys because we want those guys because life costs money.
I always encourage people, whatever you're doing, if you're going to start a business, if you want to do a podcast, if you want to go work out, etc., you need to be around those types of people just because you will learn different things. Even for myself, right? Like, I'll just say an example. If I'm sitting in a room with 10 guys that own an ice cream stand, I may know nothing about ice cream, but if all they're talking about is ice cream, eventually I'm going to learn enough to be able to say, even in just a regular conversation, well, you know, chocolate takes longer to melt than vanilla. That might not be, that's not true. I don't know. But I'm just saying the point of like, when you're around like-minded individuals, it helps you. Even if you don't have the money, if you don't exactly know everything, that's okay. I almost feel like our ignorance can prevent us because let's talk about business, for example. I love Shark Tank, okay? And Kevin O'Leary is on that show. Now, on the show, he's a prick. He's a real he is. But if he came into a local area where I was and he's like, I'm going to teach a business class, I'm not going to go, well, I don't like him, so no. Like, that's ignorance. And then there's also the other side of it where people will know that they make a lot of money. You know, hey, maybe I don't know anything about real estate, but there's a person who's coming here. He's making a lot of money. He has $1 million portfolio on real estate. Let's go see the class. A lot of people go, well, what do they know? And it's almost like ignorance. So for you to take that step to help yourself and to better yourself and to realize I might not have all the answers, and that's okay. That goes to show that you're willing to grow, that you're willing to get better. How can you get better by just sitting around and reading Reddit boards or scrolling through TikTok? That's not going to help you get better. You got to be around the people that have been successful, that have gone through the mud, that have made those mistakes. There are so many times, even with this podcast, that I sit back and I'm like, man, I wish I had done a little bit more research from the beginning, because now, and I sometimes I look at the episodes I started at the beginning and the ones I do now, and I'm like, man, just so much different. The confidence is different. That's just how life is. You get better, you get stronger with your skills. And so I always encourage people to do that. And I'm glad that you took that step, because had you not taken those classes, had you not put yourself in those environments, you wouldn't have learned certain skills. You wouldn't have.
Yeah, like the brand that I was able to build for myself, like I'm Googleable as Coach Diamond Drip. I was talking to somebody at a meeting, and I had been really intentional with using this hashtag Coach Diamond Drip on like all of my social media channels. So one of the things they were doing at that networking meeting, they were like, "Do you have any ask?" And a lot of people had brought physical business cards. I'm a digital business card person. So my ask served as my digital business card. I was like, I've been working on this since April. I'd like to know how I'm doing. Can you just Google Coach Diamond Drip? And lots of people were like, that's you. And the person who did digital marketing, she was like, did you do your SEO yourself? I was like, yes, actually. And so like that whole building a brand piece, like without that business coaching, like I wouldn't have thought that I was important enough to be on podcast. Like you were saying, I'm like, I would have thought like, I don't have things to say on interviews. Like, I don't know what I would talk about on a stage. Like, and just being around people who felt the same way, but they were getting out there and they were doing it anyway. And they were finding their tribe. They were finding the people that they were called to serve. It was like, well, Dad, right? Even going back to the beginning of this show, like, Dad, go ahead. I've been through some stuff. I could have some insights about some stuff too.
It personally speaking, it's a lot. I'd rather listen to content like this over content of somebody saying a viral meme
Mhm.
and like that. And then they go ahead and they like do a podcast or a TV show. To me, that holds no substance. It holds no weight. It's like, what do you have to offer? And I think that that's just how humans are, right? Like we want to go see those people that have been through it. We love adversity stories. We don't like the stories of this person just blowing up. And people like to feel an affinity towards something that they can believe in or that they can see themselves in.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. So perfect example this morning. So I just finished binging Sabrina the Teenage Witch on Netflix. And so I was looking for my next like binge worthy show. And I went to Disney Plus, and I put a few things in my watch list, but one of them, I don't watch the news. I'll have context there. I don't watch the news because it's usually someone dying or something bad has happened. And I'm like, I don't need that in my life. If something is bad enough, like someone will tell me, like whatever is going on. My aunt constantly watches the news and she'll be like, did you hear about such and such? I'm like, no, I didn't, but I'm sure you're going to tell me anyway.
Yeah.
So
You're my news.
exactly. And so there was this show, this series on Disney Plus about like these Mormon moms. Apparently there was like some sex scandal of like these Mormon moms, and they had created this mom talk TikTok thing. And I was like, this was like newsworthy enough that they made a whole docu-series about these people. And so I watched like 5 minutes of it. And within the first 5 minutes, I understood what happened. They were like making a bunch of TikToks, and then somebody said that there was like an orgy thing happening, and then like it was a whole sex scandal. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is like following them after. And I was sticking with it because I was like, okay, I'm getting the backstory. And then the minute they cut to like present time, and it was these two Mormon moms like sitting at a coffee shop, and the other one was like, oh my gosh, and like blah blah blah, and like, and I was like, nope, can't do it. Sorry, can't. Because you're just talking about how you went through this thing, you gained all of these 60,000s and whatever followers, and then you had this scandal, and then people, were talking about you in the news, and now you're like, how do I continue to make money and make TikToks and more viewers? And I'm like, I don't think this is what I want to binge. I'm gonna.
It holds no substance. It doesn't have anything. Yeah, like when I watch these TikTokers that are making money for gyrating on a 10-second video, which that's just what it is. I'm a very direct, blunt person. That's just what it is. You're dancing for 10, 15 seconds. And now you want to be on TV shows and you want to be on this. And it's like, in my opinion, maybe you have a niche. Good for you. But that won't be something I will ever be interested in, just because I feel like when you've gone through shit in life, you don't have time for that. I don't have time to listen to you and how you got famous because you did a trend, and now your boyfriend broke up with you, and now the world hates you, and now I don't.
All right, your husband doesn't want to have sex with you anymore because you got caught in a sex scandal. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
I don't have time to listen to this. I got things to do. There you go. I said something that might be posed as controversial. So, anyways, I want to bring up some points in some of the aforementioned podcasts to discuss, if I may, that I agree with, and also to just get more clarification from you. In one of your interviews, I heard you talk about personality types and gates of extremes. I think you even reference yourself as a recovering perfectionist,
Yeah.
which to me shows that you are very fine-tuned within yourself. I think that that's been a common pattern and theme throughout this podcast. You're very in tune with who you are. In my opinion, a lot of societal ills are people who are not in touch with themselves. To that, you say,
oh, there's so much benefit that comes with that awareness, with that being in touch with yourself. When I say that I'm a recovering perfectionist and that I do have the gate of extremes, I like quantum human design. I've been studying that a little more. It's like the gate of the wild heart now, which is a little bit more empowering than like the gate of extremes. But it's so true. Like I really don't think that I'm being extreme when it happens, and then I catch myself after I'm already in it. I'm like, I did it again, dag nabbit. Like even with podcasting, and like, so my goal that I told my assistant, I was like, I want to be on at least 5 podcasts a week. And I've been talking to people who own businesses, and they're like, that's a lot. But to be fair, some of those people also work 9-to-5 jobs. So I'm like, it's a lot to you because they're like working all day. I'm like, if I'm getting visible, if I'm building a brand, like that's like 5 hours. That's not actually a lot, actually. And I would hold strong to that. And then, so one of the other rabbit holes that I went down is the FAM method. And so it is kind of working with your cycles as a woman. Every single phase, the follicular, the menstrual, the ovulation phase, and the luteal phase, as different energy levels and different productivity levels. And so I really wanted to set my schedule around my like different phases so that I'm not working against them. But because I had this goal, I was like, I can do it. It's fine. Like I can. And Wednesday, it caught up to me because I had entered into the luteal phase, which is notorious for less energy. And you really are more introverted during this phase. And so the app that I have, it was like, you might not like people today. And I was like, all I'm doing is peopling today, actually. And it was literally like this, like I had fought through it, you know, a few months before, because I was also getting used to my cycle. So I was like, it's hard to build my schedule around my cycle when I don't quite know the patterns of it, because I just got off birth control. My body's still figuring itself out. So I need to figure out what the trend is. But on Wednesday, I had so like less energy was an understatement. And between each call that I had, I was like snacking. I was like, I got to get my carbohydrates so I can like have the energy for this next call. And then one of them canceled because like there was a scheduling mishap. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. I will just sit here and I will watch Netflix. I'm not about to touch a to-do list. I'm going to just sit here until my next call. And it took me going through that extreme of like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I can't keep working against myself. And to have that awareness, like the next morning, as I was like waking up, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can catch this in enough time. So I looked at my app and saw like when I was entering into the luteal phase and the menstrual phase of like each month until August. And I blocked it off on my calendar that I share with my assistant who schedules me. And I'm like, we are not doing this anymore. Like,
Don't book me. Yeah.
don't do not schedule. Please don't
Yeah.
do it. But yeah, it's that awareness. It's that knowing who you are and not working against that just because the shoulds or the have tos.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's why I said, in my opinion, I think not being in tune with who you are is a lot of societal's ills. I think it's a lot of the reasons why people don't reflect. I think it's a lot of times why people don't have accountability, don't have ownership, and I think it causes a lot of problems in the modern era. I do. But all right, in another interview, you talked about how we live in a microwave society. I think you might have touched up on it earlier in the podcast as well. That too, in my opinion, contributes to a lot of the modern problems. What do you say to the individuals that are programmed to this mentality? I know you talked earlier about how conditioning is a lot of things. So what do you talk to the people that are conditioned in a microwave society of everything needs to be quick?
Yeah. So as a fun fact, like 50% of the population has emotional authority, which basically the motto for emotional authority is there's no truth in the now. So when it comes to our biggest decisions, friendships, relationships, if you're about to move and career, it's better if you give yourself a minimum a night to sleep on something. And I mentioned this earlier in the example where I was asked to speak. We, for the people who are conditioned to that, and if you have emotional authority, yes, I'm definitely speaking to you. How many times have you made a decision because someone wanted an answer right now, right then, and then you regretted it later? Whether it was something as small as someone asked you to go to this party and you were like, yeah, whatever, it's a party. And then like the day comes and you're like, oh, I would much rather be like writing or doing something else, right? Whatever that something else is. Or, or even if it's, you know, you didn't have something else that you would rather be doing, something else came up and you would much rather have been doing that. And you're like, but I already agreed to this thing. So now I have to go because then I'm going to look flaky. If you just would have waited and came to a decision from a neutral place. So I would, that's where the awareness, and like you said, so many of us, we're not conditioned to be in that reflective state, but there's so much wisdom when you make the time for reflection. Because when I learned that I was emotional authority, there were several decisions that I made that I was like, I wish that I would have known that I had emotional authority. Because I would have saved myself money and time and energy. And right now there's the wisdom of like, okay, don't keep doing that. Like
Yeah. No, I agree. I think a lot of people are acting on their feelings way more than ever because of the microwave society. It does help to sit into something for a while, because then you allow yourself that process to get over something in a healthy manner. I think a lot of times people will be so quick on their emotions and then they regret it. I have another thing I want to bring up that you said. This may be controversial for some, but you
Okay.
said in an interview that antidepressants don't make you less depressed. They make you numb. Now, I like to think I'm a really smart person. I can read between the lines. I know exactly what you're saying because I have been in trouble for saying that I can't become clinically depressed. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a real thing, but what I'm saying is that I don't allow myself to get that hurt or that upset. And so if I don't believe in it, I'm not going to give it that power. So I understand what you're saying here. Can you just do your best to clarify what you mean by that? Which, by the way, I agree with. I'm not a antidepressants person. That's just not me. I think it does more of a disservice. And again, I think that's just people needing to do their research. I think if you say to a doctor, I'm a little depressed, and the first thing they say is, let me give you some antidepressants, I think that is more of a problem than, hey, what's really bothering you? Is your home life safe? Are you out of a bad relationship? There's contributing factors. That's just me. Not everyone thinks that way. But to you, can you try your best to clarify that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the criteria that goes into getting your medical marijuana card in Maryland is you have to have tried a bunch of medications that didn't work. And so I have been on Prozac, Abilify, Trazodone, Seroquel. Um, there's probably a bunch that I'm not mentioning right now because that was a long time ago. And all of those SSRIs or antidepressants that I was on, they helped make me comfortable with the sadness. They helped me make it, I guess, not as debilitating. Although some made it worse, right? And that's the side, like it's literally on the side effects of some antidepressants that suicidal thoughts may be a thing. And I'm like,
Yeah,
it's
it says it as a side
it's
effect.
the opposite of what we're going for, no? So, in my experience, the antidepressants that I was on, right? If we think of antidepressed, we think of happy. We think of someone who is, doing well, their mood is lifted. And antidepressants never did that for me. They just numbed me. They just made me accept that, yeah, I'm feeling sad, but like, meh, right? Everything is meh. It's just okay. And the trial that I participated in that used psilocybin, which is the active component in magic mushrooms, to actually heal my depression, that trial changed everything for me. It helped me to feel what the antidepressants were trying to mimic from a man made standpoint, like how it's supposed to help you be antidepressed. I That trial taught me that I was having a lot of passive suicidal thoughts. I graduated from active suicidal thoughts, like I'm gonna, slit my wrist, I'm gonna hang myself, etc. Like it graduated me from that. But especially once I got life insurance, I was like, it wouldn't be so bad if I died today, because then my family would get the insurance money. Maybe the world would be better off without me. Maybe my family would be better off without me if I wasn't here. And the trial helped me to have some insights that made those things go away. I remember like one particular moment where I was driving to pick my daughter up from school after, getting a good workout in, having a nice hot shower. It was a sunny fall day. Fall is my favorite season. And yeah.
Me too.
And I thought to myself as I was driving to get her, I was like, it would suck to die today. And that was the first time genuinely that I ever felt that way. And I would listen to music in the shower sometimes around that time. And I remember for the first time in my life, I danced in the shower because I was just, vibes were good. And I was just like, and I was like, oh, wait, am I dancing in the shower? And I was like, heck yeah, I'm dancing in the shower. I'm a happy person. And I was like, mm-hmm. And so that type of thing never happened on antidepressants.
Yeah. And I love that you are coming from a standpoint of being able to talk about it, and one, being brave enough to talk about it, but also being able, because that is a very touchy subject for a lot of people. In my opinion, I think it's a touchy subject for a lot of people because a lot of people live on those meds. And I do want to make it clear, while I will never judge a person, I don't agree with that. I think that a lot of times there's healthier alternatives, nature being one of them, that can help a person. The amount of times that I've spoken to people, and again, I can only speak from my experience, but the amount of times I've spoken to people that say I'm depressed or I'm clinically depressed. My doctor says I'm clinically depressed. I've said, that's fine. Have you gone outside? Have you done anything to help yourself feel good? Have you even, like, do you want me to make you a nice meal or order you something? And the amount of times that I've realized that, like, they don't do that is what's alarming to me. And then I hear the argument, right? The other argument point of, well, they physically can't because it's so debilitating. But I also share this to you, and we talked about earlier about the survival thing. If you really wanted to fight that, imagine this is a demon, you're fighting it. Wouldn't you do the whatever you can to survive? And that's where my head is at. And that's why I say that I don't believe I can become it, because that's my mentality is, whatever demon comes across from me, I need to survive. I'm not going to let this thing kill me. I got to go. I'm not going to die right here. And that's always been my standpoint. But again, I've never disrespected people's point of view. I just don't think that you need to have these medications to live a happy, fulfilling life. And I love that you yourself have a better leg to stand on than a person like myself, because you've been through it. You've gone through this and you've been like, no, look it, I've been through it. I can speak from it. And we need more people like you who have overcome that to speak out on it, because a lot of people are thinking that that's the only solution. And you're a clear prime example that that is not the only solution, that you can overcome it, that you can fight it if you're willing to take the necessary steps. So for that, I commend you.
I appreciate you. That was one of the reasons why I even did the trial in the first place. Like, yes, I wanted to help myself, but also, like, especially when it comes to psychedelics and magic mushrooms and things like that, we don't see enough people of color talking about the benefits of, like, alternative remedies. We just think that it's just this one way, like you were saying. And I'm like, no, no, it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it really doesn't. It doesn't. Do you mind participating in a 10 questions with diamond drip presented by ARAVE cards?
Sure.
All right. Again, one of our sponsors, ARAVE cards. Check them out. What's your favorite part about living in Maryland?
I would say that we have fall and we have beautiful sunsets. My best friend told me that on the East Coast, people who live like near the shores, we're like the only people who have like that beautiful like gradient of like pinks and purples and oranges and stuff like that. And it's because of like the salt water or something. I don't know. She nerded out about it, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. We got that going for us."
She geeked out enough for you to be like, that sounds right.
Right? That yes.
You talked about Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but
Mhm.
what's your comfort TV show?
Oh, hands down, Supernatural. Yeah.
Nice, nice. What is your dream car?
Ooh. It used to be Tesla, so I guess I'll stick with it. But that was before Teslas got so popular. I'm like, my daughter has this thing now because we rented a Tesla for one of our vacations. And so now whenever she sees a Tesla, she's like, Tesla. She's like, I want to see 100 Teslas today. And the universe doesn't bring her 100 Teslas, but daggone it, she'll be like, Tesla, Tesla, Tesla. And I'm like, it doesn't have as much appeal now that everyone has one. So
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I remember seeing a Tesla that was like from 2013 and it looks nothing like the Tesla that they have right now. So it has been around for a while. You're right.
yeah.
Greatest inspirations.
Just like people, things, sayings. Oh my gosh, my brain is like trying to pick it apart right now. I guess I'll pick one of the things that my mentor said. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So many times, right? We live in a world of options. And I get bogged down by it myself, which is why I try and reduce my decision fatigue. But we live in a world with so many choices. And so just because there are a lot of choices out there, there are a lot of directions, it doesn't mean you should. You have to feel into what's right for you.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Favorite beverage that isn't water?
That isn't water, coffee.
Me too. Would you rather live in a desert or a tundra?
Tundra.
Yeah, you can snuggle in.
Yeah.
There's more things that try to help keep you warm.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can take all your clothes off in the desert and still be hot.
And still, yeah. Favorite subject in elementary school?
Art.
Most random thing you purchase as an adult?
The most random. I bought a 30-day pill pack.
Amusement park vacation or beach vacation?
Amusement park.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing 10 questions with Diamond Drip presented by ARAVE Cards. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to add this to the screen, okay?
Okay.
If a dog wore pants, would he wear them like this or like this?
I would say the second one with that just looks cute. He's like in a boat.
I agree with you on that. Awesome. If you could change the happy birthday song, how would you do it?
There are so many different versions of the happy birthday song.
We're talking about the original. How would you change the happy birthday song?
Well, I'm a big fan of like Hippie Sabotage and Odessa and all those other types. So it would have to have like a really slow like build up and then the bass would drop and then people would really get in. Yeah, right.
Happy birthday to you.
Right. The bass. I need a bass bubble in my happy birthday song.
I like it. Chat pack time. I'm going to ask you a random question from the chat pack.
Okay.
All right. If you were writing an autobiography, what would the book's title be besides your name? There's not a more fitting question in the chat pack.
Oh man, I really wish I had written it down as many times. I do actually have one. It's like the untold story of healing, what Big Pharma doesn't want you to know. It's something like that.
Yep. And again, that correlates to exactly what we said earlier. I mean, heck, you and I could do a whole episode just on that because I agree with you on that. Yeah, of course. Diamond, why don't you plug yourself in? How can the people find you, follow you, sign up for your website? And I think I saw something that you even do a free reading. They just have to know something. And then so how can everyone get in touch with you?
Thank you. So the best way for someone to get in touch with me is by doing something for you. So on my website, diamonddripconsulting.com, I do have a free chart calculator where, with just a few details, your birth date, your birth time, and your place of birth, you're able to pull your unique human design energetic blueprint. And if you feel so called, you can download the free gift that's there. It's a 7-page ebook that gets customized on you. So it tells you how your energy type is designed to sleep, how you're designed to hold, to manage overwhelm and pressure, and how your immune system is designed. So that is all there at diamonddripconsulting.com. I also have all my social handles there. So YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I'm not on Twitter, but I am on TikTok.
Are you doing any of the dances?
Nope, just my podcast reels. Yep.
All right, so you won't be going viral for doing some dance trend, and Nathanael won't be looking in a couple months being like, man, I interviewed her. Maybe I should get on the train of liking these people. I don't know.
No, I do not dance publicly unless it is with someone.
There you go. There you go. You know what? I love to dance. I love to sing. I'm not good at either or, but I love to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Diamond, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, joining me on this episode. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for making this happen, because this is one of the best interviews I've ever done. I knew it was going to be a good one. I was super excited. I couldn't wait. I was anticipating it. I really appreciate you for doing this. And I've now sworn you in. You are now like an Avenger. Boom. You're like a superhero with me. So it comes with good thing and bad things. Good thing, you have a fan in life for me forever. Bad thing, if I ever need an emergency podcast episode, I got to call you up and you do it. No, I'm just kidding.
I love that. No, I appreciate you. I've appreciated our conversation. This has been one of my favorite podcasts. You are awesome. We have so much resilience in both of our backstories. And so to just share this conversation with you, even the random questions at the end, it's just like, I love it. I loved all of it.
Well, you are fantastic. Party animals, that is going to do it for this episode of the Reyes Reflection. We are wrapped. Follow the show, share the pod, follow me on those socials at I'm Nathanael Reyes. Check out our wonderful sponsors, ARAVE Cards, Jocko Fuel, Smacking Sunflower Seeds, and Mad Rabbit. And as always, may you live, may you love, and may you thrive. I'm Oprah as a dude, and I love you, and I love all of you.